Okay, here's a quick walkthrough of this Build Your First App in Java CodeLab that Google has. So we're going to go through this and try it out. So the lab uses a little more complicated interface than some of the other ones we've been doing. It has fragments, what are called fragments, and so there are a couple more files and a couple more buttons built into this. And when we start it up, we'll see how that works. So we're going to run Android Studio. We're going to create a new project. But here we're going to select this basic activity rather than empty activity. And this basic activity will have a couple more controls, menu, and a floating button in part of it. So click on basic activity, hit next. So I'm just going to give it some name. I'm just calling this my first app, the recorded version, changing the package name to CSS.first app. Locations fine. Make sure the language is a Java, and again, set the minimum SDK. I usually choose 7, but it's flexible. And then we'll set this up. So once the app is created, the tutorial kind of walks you through this. Let's just do a quick overview also of this, the files here. So rather than just having a single main activity Java file, we have that, but we also have 2 fragment files. So fragments are just sections of the screen that are kind of taken, have their own code and design to them. So basically we have the main activity, and then we have 2 parts to this, a first fragment and a second fragment. In the main activity, we see some things. So there's a floating action bar code for that already set up here. And then there's some code for creating the main a menu, and then when a menu item is selected. So again, our app generally looks like this now, and then this ... is a menu system up here, and we can populate that menu system, and this is what's called our floating action button. Right now it shows a email icon here. So it builds when you do the basic app interface, it adds support for those automatically here. So let's go on to our next thing, which is the layout and looking how the layout works. And so again, there are going to be a number of different layout components here, and we'll be looking at this first fragment one. So let's go back to our code. So again, before we had a single layout, this activity main XML layout. Now the activity main shows the entire screen with this floating action bar, the number, or the button for next, and then a hello world fragment here. It doesn't show the menu here, but the menu would be up here. It has this layout here, but this is actually a holder, and so what it actually showing here is this inside here is actually a fragment here, and you'll see this. So we won't actually be modifying this activity main one. Inside that is this content one, which is some of the inside part of it, which includes this stuff. But again, this is also just holding a fragment object, so we won't be modifying that. So that basically this is a container that holds this, which is a container which holds the first fragment. So the first fragment is where we'll actually be modifying our code here. And again, in the first fragment now we can actually see the text view and the buttons here, and we can drag and modify this. Where in the other ones they were showing them, but we couldn't modify them because they were just showing these other containers that contained this stuff. So again, we're going to go into first fragment.xml and modify that. So let's look at what the tutorial has. Okay, again, they're showing you go to fragment first.xml to set it up. Talks a little bit about the layout of this, which I think we've covered in other areas. And we're going to set up a simple layout here, and that looks, oh, that's the default. Oh, I guess they're just showing you the default layout here, and talking about changing some of the properties of that, and then displaying this, and then they're running this. on their machine. Actually, I think they did this in step 3 and I missed that step where they actually created a device, a virtual device, and set that up. So let's again look at that. So again, here you can go to Tools, AVD Manager, or run the AVD Manager over here. And we're going to start up a virtual machine. So I'm just going to do this pixel and run that. I'll wait for that to start up here. So once my emulator's up and running, I can run my program and it'll run it on this emulator here. So I'll hit this play button and wait for that to start up. And again, I can watch the Gradle build running down here. That'll show the progress and it's still working on this. And it'll take a little bit to get this first loaded in. So once it's loaded here, I can see that this is a little menu. If I click on this, it would pop up a menu. It just says settings now, only thing. There's this floating action bar here that I could click on and the next button here. And the next just goes to a different fragment here. And then the mail button actually, I think is set up just to pop up a little short message here. So that's what's running by default. Now, they talk about how you can go in here and change. I think we've seen some of this stuff, how we can change some of these layouts here. We can set some of the properties like the text size to be different displays. And they actually, in the tutorial, walk you through doing some, changing some other text properties here. I'm not going to go into too much detail, though that's not too critical to this course for us. But there are properties. So let's look at the next option. So the next thing they do is look at adding colors and color resources here. So under resources and values, there's usually a colors file, and we can add colors to that. So let's just take a look at what that looks like. So again, under resources, instead of in layout, but in values, we'll often modify a couple different files. One is the strings file and one is the colors file. Let's look at the colors file. So this just lists some colors here that are defined, and we can add other ones. So it asks us to add a new color called screen background and set its color. So I'm just going to copy that code, paste it in here. And set up our screen background color. And now we can use that in our code. So again, we can add these different colors, and then we can go in here in our layout and we can specify the background color and change and set that and should display. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to save that file. And then go back to my layout, fragment first layout, and find the background color. So again, I'm going to want it for the whole screen, so I'm going to click on my constraint layout and look through my attributes here, scroll down. It's not a common attribute, but under all attributes, there's a background. That's, I think, the background image. I think I want this background tint one. So if I click on that and click on, I think, this button here, no, that's not it. Let's try this again. Background tint. There. So I clicked on the color, and then I can go into resources and choose the screen background color that I selected there for this and have that set. And again, you can also go in and modify that color through the color picker if you want. If you go back in here, you can go to custom and then redo this color. But again, often we might want this as a saved color that's locked in. So that's what we're using by default here. Okay, but again, that's not critical to a lot of the coding we'll be doing. I just wanted to go over it here. I'm not gonna go over too much about this width and height properties here. We're gonna go on and talk about adding views and constraints. So this is our new layout. all we're going to do, we're going to try to add 3 buttons here for this here. So they talk about constraining these buttons and setting these up. And again, so we're going to bring in, we've got 1 button already. We're going to add 2 new buttons to that list and constrain them. So let's go into our app, go under common, there's these buttons here. I'm going to go and add 1 button and add another button. And let's zoom in a little bit and see if we can get this to be displayed on the screen. So this one is already, the next one is already tied up here. So I actually want these all in a row. So I'm just going to tie the top of this button in. So I've clicked on that button on left. I'm going to tie that in so that the top of it aligns with the top of the next button. And same with here, I'm going to tie that in so it lines up with the top of this button. I've also tied this button in on the side to the next button, and then this button into the side to the next button. And the next button is actually tied in the center of the screen. So that'll stay in the center of the screen, and then I'll just tie these buttons on. I'm going to redo some editing to these buttons. I want 1 labeled toast, 1 labeled count, and 1 labeled random. And I want to probably change the IDs of those also. So again, the text on these, we want to modify. So find the text, and again, I want 1 called toast, count, and random are my 3 buttons. So the first one is going to be toast. And toast is just a method used to pop up a message like toast pops up. So that's just, and then this next one is going to be count. So the first button we're going to do is a toast button, and this pops up a little message here, a toast message here, and sets that up. So we're going to open up this first fragment.java file and set this up for this to be. So we're going to have to code in a button for this stuff. Now they do a find view by ID, and they find the random button. I like to do this in a couple different steps. So let me show you how I tend to do this in our code, and I prefer you do it this way too. So again, I'm going to go into the first fragment.java code here. I'd suggest you declare a button variable and then give it some name. So this will be our toast button. And again, if you're not set up to do auto imports here, you'll see this button is highlighted in red, and I have to Alt Enter to get it to import correctly, or I can have this import the class. And it will add the import up here into the import section here. So I added the button here. Now in my onCrate, I want to set up those buttons. So this layout is just a little bit weird here. We're doing this inflate here, and then after that inflate, I want to do my code for this. So I'm going to, with this button, I'm going to go button toast equals find view by ID. What I normally do is find view ID, but here I've got something different because I have a view, and so I've got to type it in a little differently here. Okay, and I did this in the wrong spot. When we just have a single activity, we often do it in the onCrate activity, but when we have fragments like this, we call what is called an inflator here to inflate the view, and then down here under the view, that's where we have to do that. And that's here, you'll see code already to set up the button for our button count activity. And now I'm going to do a similar thing here, and I'm going to set up a button for initialize our toast button toast equals, and then rather than saying find view ID, I have to say view, and view is this local variable that I've been given here, and then I can type in find view by ID. Lowercase find view by ID, and then I'm going to type in r.id dot, and then the button toast ID here. And once I have that, now I can say button toast dot set on click listener, and then do a new view on click listener object here. Now, they actually have something similar here set up for the count button here, my button count. But notice they're doing this in one step. So they are doing this find view by ID and finding the toast button, and then they're calling set on click listener. I prefer to do this, have this variable set up and do this once. And then if we need to use that variable, we'll use it again here. So this is it's just a different way. Otherwise, I find this code section a little complicated, especially for new students working. Okay, so we've got the on-click listener here. Now we're going to do a toast message. I'm going to go back here and see what their toast message is for us. So they just have this code for popping up a toast message here. So let's just bring that over. I'm just going to copy that over and post that into my onClick method. So let's talk, well, first we're going to have to do some imports. If we're not automatically importing, we have to import toast here, and that'll take care of things. So what we do is we create a toast object. So we declare a toast object called myToast, and then inside the toast, they're making some text We need to get the context that we're getting this text in, so we get the activity here. Here's the message that we're going to pop up, and here's how long we're going to pop it up for. And there's a couple of default links, a short length and a long length, and so I just say toast, and then the length is length short or length long here. And then once I have that created, I can do a use my toast.show. Now, later on, we'll probably shorten this all to one line, but this isn't a bad way to get started, where we declare the variable and we initialize it, and then we show this toast message. So let's try this out in our emulator, see if this is going to work. I'm going to see if I can run this quickly. So it had some problems. It said I had to restart my app because, again, I had made too drastic a change to do the quick run. So I hit that. It's going to drop, it'll quit this app and rerun it again over here, hopefully. So now I'm just ready. It's quit the app, just waiting for it to pop up the new app. And again, so I should have this toast button should be working. I should be able to click on that, and it should pop up a little message here. And so there's two ways of popping up messages in Android. One is called toast, and this is a toast message here, and it'll pop up hello toast. There's also something called snack bar, which again, another cute name. And I think this is actually set up to use a snack bar message. So this is what a snack bar message looks like. So this is again a toast message, and this is a snack bar message that pops up down at the bottom. Okay, so that's working. So we can do our toast. Let's go on and do our count here. So we're going to make a count method. Again, we're going to set this up with our on click, and then we're going to just declare a little method called count me that will do this count for us. Okay, so right now, because I modified, if you remember our fragment, there was this count button here, and I actually changed it. It was set up to be the next button. I just changed it rather than delete it. So there's actually already, in my version, already a on-click listener set up for the count button, and it is actually set up to go to the next fragment. So it actually loads in a different fragment here. And I'm just going to delete that code because we're not working with multiple fragments right now. And I'm going to just put in increment the count here. So we could put the code right here for that. And why don't we just do that to start with, and then we'll move that into a separate procedure. In their version, they have this in a separate procedure called count me. So let's just do that in just a sec. But first, let's just see how we can do it here. So again, what we want to do is get the count value. So we'd want to get the string. So I'm just going to grab this code here. We're going to read in the string from our variable out here. And but we're going to need to have access to our count variable. So up here, I'm going to say I need to access a text view. And give it a name, text view count. I think I have some extra space there. Okay. Now once I have that text view declared, I'm going to initialize that just like I initialized my buttons here. I'm going to add that text view count, and I'm going to do a view dot find. And again, the one thing that's really different here is where in our basic activity, our empty activity, we could just say find view by ID. Here we have to use the view construct to do that, view and then find view by ID. And again, in both cases we use this r.id.text view count. Okay, so that'll be my variable to access this text count, and so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to get the text and convert it to a string and store that as a string variable. Next, I'm going to parse that as an integer and add 1 to it. I'm going to copy that code over and put that in here. So I'm going to parse that string to a count and add 1 to the count. And then finally, I want to probably update that count out there. So we're going to do a set string here to display that count. And again, I want to use the variable I declared above here for accessing my text view. Text view set count to count. And then I'm going to take my count, which is an integer, and I have to convert it to a string. So again, that's my code here for displaying this. Again, if I run this, it should be able to work on my screen. So let's see if this will work. I can count and do this here, and it should work. Now again, if you have errors, if it crashes or whatever, make sure you should be able to look under run and see error statements, a crash report, and it should tell you what line it was, and then an error message should be hidden in that somewhere. So be ready to watch there. Okay, but I'm going to actually move this into a separate routine here rather than having it on click. What we'll often want to do is set up a separate method. So the question is where I want to do this. So I'm in this public void on create method here that goes down to here. So I'm going to add a new method after this. Let's see, what did they call it? They called it the count me method. So let's do the same thing. So it'll be a private method. It'll be void, it won't return anything, and it will be just called count me. And then we'll bring this code here down into this method. That we can work with. And then up here we can call the count me method for this. Now, depending on how you have this set up, you may have to pass in a view to this. So notice when they are doing this, they are passing in this view as a parameter into this area. But they don't really necessarily have to. Again, it depends on how you have this set up and where you have your control set up. Because we have these variables set up at the class level up here, and we're instantiating them down here, we can use them in this variable. So this text view here, we can access this easily. And so this doesn't have to, we don't actually need any parameters for this. And later on, we'll talk about ways when we want to break what methods, what classes should have access to the views, the user interface objects, and what should be separated from those user interface objects. And we'll talk about things like a model view controller or a model view model kind of set up where we have kind of distinct separation between what areas know about views or the GUI and what areas don't know about the GUI. So, okay, and now this should work. So I can again click on this to get the numbers to change in count stuff. Now, one thing I should point out, I forgot to point out earlier, is in order to get the yellow background here, I actually had to make one other change. I made a mistake earlier when I was changing the background. I changed the background tint. It should really be just the background, just the word background here, not the background tint. You should be able to click on that and select your background color under resources. And that should set it up. I don't know what my background tint was there, but that's the right one to select. Okay, so now we have this count set up. And we can look at this. Next, the random button. So here they're talking about caching the text view. So again, they were doing this find view by ID every time within the count me area or something like that. And they're talking about how that can be kind of expensive to do that every time. So they're talking about creating a variable called for this, and then finding and setting that up here. And that's, again, what we've done here basically is and this is our preferred way of doing this, declare your variables at the class level here, and then only once find these variables, and then you can use them multiple times here. So we generally don't want to be calling this find view by ID frequently. It's a little bit of a slower method there. So that's how they have this set up here. Again, and they're doing this find view by ID and finding it here. So they're actually doing it in on create view here rather than in where we're doing it. So we're doing it in on view created here, and they're doing it in on create view with the first fragment object here. Now, I don't mind doing it here. I think this is actually an easier place to do it. And this is only called once inside here. So I think that's an adequate place to put it for this. Okay, we're going to actually skip over this last section where they're talking about implementing a second fragment. So again, what happens here is there are actually two different screens, two different fragments that are available, and they are running another fragment here, and that's the code we actually got rid of with their on-click stuff to open up this second fragment. And by default, in this even this basic thing, they set up a second fragment view, and again, this is they have code for the second fragment here. So basically, each fragment is basically like a second screen that can be loaded in. But we're going to actually cover fragments and how you pass messages or data to other fragments and other methods later on in the course and go into that more detail. So for now, I'm just going to skip that. So I'm just going to end here with when we have our first fragment or working and this basic count button. So hopefully you enjoyed this and got a little experience with fragments.